A B&B owner was found murdered at her lakefront property by the same man who murdered her mother 23 years earlier. It was supposed to be a quiet morning by the lake, but inside the elegant old house on the shore of Horseshoe Lake, something terrible had just happened. Something nobody could imagine. 40-something years of memories, family history, and hope were about to be shattered in a single moment. At the top of the grand staircase stood 63-year-old Martha McKay, beloved by many as the owner of the family's waterfront bed and breakfast. But as calls to the local alarm had triggered police, the peace of the house was broken forever. When deputies burst in, they found Martha's body at the top of the stairs. She had been stabbed and bludgeoned, her life brutally taken. Shock welled up among first responders and neighbors alike, but the story didn't end there. The man they spotted fleeing the scene, jumping from an upstairs window, plunged into the very lake that had once seemed a haven for the house. He dove into the water and vanished beneath the surface, never to come back up. Rescue teams dragged the lake. With sonar, they recovered his body. When authorities identified him, jaws dropped. It was Travis Lewis, the same man convicted more than 2 decades earlier for murdering Martha's mother and cousin in that same house. In that moment, horror collided with disbelief. The same killer who once shattered a family had come back, and one more person from that family lay dead. The calm waters of Horseshoe Lake now hid something sinister. And as the lake's still surface reflected the morning sky, the truth began to sink in. This was not just a tragic murder, it was a twisted echo of a horror that had been buried in the past. But why? And how? What happened next? The secrets, the betrayals, the choices, all led up to this awful moment. The calm, peaceful lakefront of Horseshoe Lake hid decades of pain and secrets. To understand how Martha McKay ended up in that nightmare, we have to go back, all the way to 1996.
Back then, Martha was a teenager, and her world was torn apart. Her mother, Sally Snowden McKay, and her cousin, Lee Baker, were brutally murdered in the very same home Martha had grown up in. The shock sent ripples through their small Arkansas community. The man convicted of those murders was Travis Lewis, just 16 years old at the time. Police called it one of the most chilling crimes the county had ever seen. Martha's life changed forever. She moved through grief, anger, and fear, watching her family torn apart by violence. But unlike most, she didn't let her heart harden completely. Years later, she heard that Lewis had been released from prison on parole in 2018. Instead of running from him or seeking revenge, Martha made a choice few could understand. She hired him to help maintain her lakefront property. Neighbors and friends were stunned. Why would Martha welcome the man who destroyed her family into her life? She claimed she believed he had changed and that he was innocent of the murders he had been convicted for. She trusted him. She even befriended him. But there were cracks beneath the surface. Money began to disappear from the property. Items went missing, and arguments broke out. Lewis became difficult, unpredictable, and suspicious. The once trusted caretaker was turning into a threat. Yet Martha tried to stay calm, hoping things wouldn't spiral out of control. Her neighbors noticed changes too. They whispered about how she was living so dangerously, trusting the same man who had once taken her mother and cousin. Some worried for her safety. Others couldn't believe she could forgive him. But Martha's compassion was stronger than fear, or at least she thought it was. Then, one evening, in March 2020, everything came to a head. A heated argument escalated between Martha and Lewis. What exactly was said, or what pushed him over the edge, isn't fully known. But when the confrontation ended, Martha McKay was dead. The lakefront house forever scarred by history repeating itself. The story of forgiveness turned to horror. The same man who had shattered a family 23 years earlier had returned, and now another life had been taken. Friends, neighbors, and authorities struggled to make sense of how history could repeat itself in such a chilling way. And just when it seemed like the nightmare had ended with Lewis's death in the lake, a new question hung in the air. Had there been warning signs Martha had missed, and could anyone have stopped this tragedy before it happened? The lakefront house at Horseshoe Lake was quiet that morning. Too quiet. The sun reflected off the water, sparkling as if nothing terrible had ever happened. But inside, the scene was of horror. Martha McKay, the woman who had trusted the man who destroyed her family decades ago, lay lifeless in her home. The house that once held laughter and warmth was now a place of tragedy and unanswered questions.
The argument that had escalated the night before was now revealed in small, chilling details. Money had been missing from the property, and tensions between Martha and Lewis reached a dangerous peak. Witnesses later described seeing Lewis leave the house, storming off in a rage. It wasn't long before police were called. They raced to the lake, fearing the worst. When officers arrived, Lewis was nowhere to be found. Panic and dread rippled through the community as search teams scoured the lake. Then, in a shocking twist, his body was recovered in the water. It appeared he had jumped in, whether to escape justice or in desperation, no one knows for certain. But with Lewis gone, the terror ended. Yet, the questions remained. Investigators pieced together the chilling timeline. The same man who had taken the lives of Martha's mother and cousin in 1996 had been hired, trusted, and allowed into the family's life. His return led to the murder of Martha, closing a horrifying circle of violence that spanned more than 2 decades. Family, friends, and the entire Arkansas community struggled with disbelief. How could someone so dangerous be allowed back into the lives of the very people he had harmed before? In the aftermath, authorities and neighbors reflected on the tragedy. It was a story of forgiveness turned to horror, of a community grappling with loss, and of the unpredictable nature of human trust. Martha McKay's life had ended at the hands of the same person who haunted her family's past, leaving a legacy of pain that would never fully heal. And though the lake returned to its calm, sparkling surface, the house at Horseshoe Lake will forever echo with the story of the B&B owner who was brave enough to forgive, only to face the ultimate betrayal.